You've played and enjoyed Kingdom Hearts. You anticipate Kingdom Hearts 2 to the point of, neglecting your life priorities. You get the game and you turn on the console and TV. You wonder how the story begins and look forward to taking control of Sora, not to mention see his friendship with Donald and Goofy. Except, what? Who is this Roxas guy? Where's Sora? Who are those guys? This is Kingdom Hearts 2? The game that was developed with user feedback in mind? And the game that was inevitable considering the ending of the first Kingdom Hearts plus an unlockable trailer? Well, get those Keyblades ready once again, because this is the review of Kingdom Hearts 2, specifically the final mix being played on the PlayStation 4. The setting of the first Kingdom Hearts game consisted of multiple worlds, most of which originate from Disney films, and Kingdom Hearts 2 does a similar thing. Just like before, the protagonist is Sora, who is joined by his Disney friends Donald and Goofy, and he battles with his trusty Keyblade. But as said in this review's introduction, you don't start out as him. Instead, you start out as Roxas, a teen in Twilight Town hanging out with his friends during the summer, and doing errands to earn money. Yeah, that's one of the things you do. Sora, Donald and Goofy wake up from their sleep after their prologue, look at chain of memories and stuff to find out how and why they were asleep. Then the quest begins proper, to find the friends King Mickey and Riku and stop the enigmatic organization from Castle Oblivion, now properly known as Organization 13. The Heartless and other Disney villains appear and are no less nasty than before, but a new group of enemies known as the Nobodies that are connected to Organization 13 make things more complicated. And speaking of complicated, well, Kingdom Hearts 2's story is more complex than the previous games, and whether that's a good thing or not is mostly up to you. The themes of the heart, destiny and friendship are featured, as are the retelling of the Disney stories. But the additions of Organization 13, Twilight Town, Roxas and other characters, including the identity of the final boss, seem to set up the Kingdom Hearts lore and mythology to the point of words such as convoluted and make it up as you go along come into mind. You may find the story simple to follow if you don't think about it too much. However, it does have its share of problems such as cheesy or repetitive dialogue.
Sora! Donald! Goofy!
I'm Sora. He's Donald and that's Goofy.
Sora! Donald and Goofy!
I'm Sora.
And I'm Donald.
Nice to meet you, Tron. I'm Goofy.
Plus pacing problems such as a big exposition dump halfway through the game, and of course the aforementioned prologue. The Disney stories are mostly separate from the main story, but feel less like filler in contrast to before, though that is probably due to the gameplay, more on that later. And if you liked the juxtaposition of Disney characters with Final Fantasy ones from before, you'll surely be happy with the fan service. Not only are characters like Cloud and Leon back, but you get other characters from Final Fantasy 6, 9 and even 10 too. Overall, you may prefer what is essentially the simpler story and characterizations from the first game, but what is done here works out well. You may find faults with the story, but you can't possibly find fault with the style. This is one beautiful looking game, even though it's an HD release of a 2006 PlayStation 2 game. The animation is better, especially in the cutscenes and during battle, and the settings look less bland and repetitive. The game translates the Disney memories to 3D beautifully once again. With the new worlds, the chances to bring about some different aesthetics have to be commended. The Pirates of the Caribbean section mirrors the live action films extremely well. And even the Tron section has its own colour scheme. The soundtrack is exceptional once again. The tune for Twilight Town does not try too hard to usurp the Traverse Town music. Some of the music cues are just lovely. And much of the music from before comes back in one way or another to remind us of our visits to the Colosseum or Halloween Town. Much of the voice talent from before, including Haley Joel Osment, returned to stand in front of that microphone, though some of the voice acting is not good, especially when trying to imitate characters such as Captain Jack Sparrow. As mentioned at the beginning of this review, the game was developed mostly with user feedback in mind, and it shows. The camera is generally better, so are the gummy ship sections. There is far less of an emphasis on 3D platforming. The controls are better too, though they can be a little too twitchy or even sensitive. The game generally consists of exploration, combat and the occasional minigame. Basically it's an action RPG. You travel to multiple worlds via a gummy ship. The gummy ship sections see you flying around and shooting stuff in order to unlock a path to the next world. Thankfully, it is not the same as before, and it's more exciting, dynamic, and visually interesting. The only problems are that they do go on a little too long, and again feel a little out of place. Still, it's a fun time sink, especially with high scores and the option to modify or create your own gummy ship. I call mine the Viddy. Once you arrive in that world, you find yourself taking part in a Disney story, whether it be Mulan, Beauty and the Beast, and so on. The heartless and nobodies, and even Disney villains are causing trouble. It is up to you to explore and engage in combat. The 3D platforming from before feels almost non-existent, so you're less likely to feel frustrated at missing a jump, regardless of what feels like less stiff jumping and a more controllable camera. This does make for level design, but it's not so much vertical scaling of heights, but consists of spread out fields and pathways. This, combined with story-specific points that actually prevent you from going down a certain path, does mean exploration is less open-ended than before, but it can be argued that it is better to have less frustrating exploration and less detours instead of 3D platforming and aimless wandering that probably sounded better on paper. Still, there is plenty of stuff to find, consisting of treasure chests, puzzle pieces, entry points to side content, all of which generally have good rewards. You will get new abilities as you go, one day later, which means having to revisit most worlds a second time due to story reasons provides a good incentive to continue playing. If there's one particular reason why it's hard to stop continue playing, it is the combat. The combat feels more fluid and stylish than before, with new mechanics that still stick to the ideas of simplicity from the first game. The hit the X button until enemy is gone button mashing is back. Yeah, it is a button masher, but there is more to it than that. You use magic, items, and even summons, one of which is that adorable blue alien Stitch. One of the new mechanics is that of drive forms, which Sora can utilize when he has both the right amount of drive points and specific party members. For example, the first one you get is the Valor form, which you can use when you have 3 drive points, which are accumulated through combat, and Goofy in your party. The Valor form is more combat oriented with a focus on really cool combos, so there are other drive forms with different focuses and different ways of leveling up. Seriously, read the fine print on how to level up these forms, especially as you get more while progressing. There is one big problem with drive forms, especially when you want to get more rewards. Leveling up drive forms gives you access to more abilities that don't require turning them on, such as higher jumps. This is fine, except leveling up drive forms, especially specific ones, can lead to quite a bit of grinding, which is not a good example of delayed gratification in getting rewards. There is also the possibility of the anti-Sora drive form randomly turning up when switching on a drive form. This causes Sora to change into a shadowy form that can be powerful, but you can't use items and most other abilities. Regardless of this potentially appearing after abusing drive forms, this is an annoyance. A balancing net possibly, but an annoyance nonetheless. Drive forms aren't the only powerful weapon to be utilized in combat. There are limits. Used in combination with either Donald or Goofy, some powerful attacks can be unleashed. There are moments when you have to have a world-specific character with you, such as Mulan or the Beast, and their limits are nice too. Plus, there is plenty of side content in this game. The Moogles are back with their item synthesis. It's a little more complicated than before, and different in that any items you find, shards, gems, etc., are automatically given to the Moogles. Still, the item synthesis can be utilized much earlier in the game in contrast to last time. You can get some really cool stuff from Moogles, so be prepared to fight or explore everywhere for stuff. There are Colosseum tournaments once again, and optional bosses, plus the aforementioned treasure chests and puzzle pieces. The only questionable use of side content is the world of Atlantica from The Little Mermaid. There is thankfully little to no swimming involved, but the world has been reduced to that of a music rhythm game? Pressing different buttons at the right times while hearing Under the Sea and other songs has never been so much fun. Nah, I'd rather go for a swim in real life. In regards to both limits and drive forms, it has to be said, this game is fairly easy. There appears to be a difficulty spike halfway through the game, and there are quite a few challenging enemies and bosses, especially the optional ones again. There's a boss exclusive to the final mix that you may find very challenging, but unless you're playing on at least Proud Mode, the second highest difficulty, you probably won't see yourself dying that much. When playing this for your first time, however, there is mostly nothing wrong with playing on normal mode. In fact, when playing Kingdom Hearts 2 for your first time, you may find it hard to put it down. Yes, the prologue is not exactly anything great, and I only knew of its existence before playing. So just complete that, and you'll find yourself having the time of your life when Sora, Donald, and Goofy appear proper. Yes, this game does feel fairly easy, especially when it comes to drive forms and limits. Yes, the drive forms could have been a little better implemented or balanced. Yes, the level design is a bit less open than usual. Yes, there's a lot of button mashing. And yes, the story may be a bit too hard to understand. In fact, why wasn't the story of Chain of Memories featured or clarified in some form? But the positives outweighing the negatives is more noticeable in the first main Kingdom Hearts sequel, which shows the developers did listen. It is telling how good this game is when I decide to play this again on a different difficulty. Well, skipping the cutscenes of course, they can be a bit long. If you liked the first Kingdom Hearts, you'll surely like this. Probably more so. And even then, who couldn't pass the opportunity to feel like a kid again in those Disney worlds, complete with compelling characters, gameplay, even Final Fantasy fan service? A JRPG that's very much recommended.